Hi guys, welcome to the podcast Dear Life. I'm your host Raza Pulami, and this is the faith-based podcast where we bring fresh perspective, real talk, and lots of inspiration from the Bible. And today we're gonna talk about a friendship like Jonathan and David. If you have watched my previous episode where I have invited my one of close friend and we have talked about why circle matters and how it influenced us, specifically focusing in our friendship. And today I would like to dive more into Bible and look at the example and how we can be like them. So today I'm talking about a friendship like David and Jonathan. David's story really fascinates me because it talks about Goliath, giant, and how God has favor over David, from nothing to he make him something. He has took David from how he was invisible to the people to making him visible to the people, and how we can see that God had a divine plan in David's life. And while we are learning about a friendship, we need to understand in our this David story, if you really truly want to understand a friendship about David and Jonathan, you have to look into the story of little bit about David's side and about Jonathan. So David was a shepherd boy who used to take care of his father sheep and flocks. And on the other hand, Jonathan is the son of a king. His father name is King Saul, and he is the firstborn in his family. So Jonathan was a firstborn. So when you are the firstborn in the family, a king will always train his son to be the future king, because if something happened, because there is uncertainty, because they have a lot of enemy, they might get killed. So they will always train their firstborn to be like king. So when the country needs the next king, they are ready and they're not hesitant. So if you look into Jonathan's life, he was always, since he was a kid, people believed he's gonna be the next king. People said, oh, you're gonna be the great future king. And people trained him to be like a king. And he fight like a king. He eat like a king. He thought like, I'm gonna be the future next king and I have to work hard. And I feel like he had so much pressure in him that I have to be the future king. So I must perfect at things that I do. Everything I do, I need to do it perfect. And in the other hand, there is a boy whose name is David, who is shepherd. And later, when King Saul does not obey God leaves from him. And God said to Prophet Samuel, that he gonna anoint a person who is after God's heart, and he's gonna be the next king. And when these things was going around, when Jonathan heard this thing, he might have heard him, because I was imagining in his shoe, even though let's say Jonathan was never interested in becoming a king, but he had trained all those years to be like a king. And if you really imagine in Jonathan's faith, if you dive really into and feel the pain that Jonathan was going, even though he may not be interested, let's say he's not interested in becoming a king, still he trained, he was pressurized to do everything perfect. And now God is choosing someone else to be a king, and who is a shepherd boy, a normal boy. And in that time, shepherd was compared as a low level. So, and God is choosing a shepherd boy. And Jonathan might feel, it's okay if God has left my father, but at least, God could pick a better person rather than a shepherd. Even a David family couldn't believe that God picked David as a future king, because that is crazy. And in here, I feel like when Jonathan heard this thing, he had to accept it, and how he amazingly fight the inner fight in his thought. Because whenever something, happen in our life, there are always negative thoughts and there is positive thoughts, right? So whenever the negative thoughts come, I love how Jonathan carried away really nicely, and he fought and he accept whatever the God has chosen is best for their country and is best for him also. And if we look into 1 Samuel 18:1, it has says such amazingly about David and Jonathan friendship, and I really love it. After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. And in here we can see, after David had finished talking with King Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved David as himself. It's crazy to have a friend like a Jonathan who loves David like himself. Because I have very close friend, but I don't think I love them as I love myself. And a lot of time we are lacking, and Bible is giving us such a high standard that we need to have friendship where we love them as we love ourselves. And it's so amazing, because hearing it from Jonathan's side, he was to be the next king, but he humbled himself down. He said, I'll not go by my desire, but I will go by what God say, not by my feeling, but what God has to say. And he might had jealousy, right? When God had picked David as a king, like he could have said, God, at least you could pick someone strong and very good at fighting, or like who is capable to be a future king. But you picked a separate boy. He could have those jealousy, but he still fight those inner fight, and he loved David as himself. And if we really dive into the story of David, we can find how Jonathan has helped him escape from his father, how Jonathan have helped David save his life. And it's so amazing about their friendship. They loved each other, and Jonathan respect, and Jonathan say, whatever you do, I will support you. And I feel like from this example of the Bible, we can learn to be like Jonathan. Because a lot of time I have personally realized myself, whenever we're watching a video where people is helping the homeless, or where people risk their life to save some totally stranger, we are saying, I wish we had more people like them. We're very selfish. I wish we could have more people like them who can be like this. And while I was scrolling through the comment section while I was watching, one of the men, he risked his life to help the stranger out in the fire. And in there, while I was reading through the comment section, people were saying, we need more people like him. But there were fewer people saying, we need to be like him. And in my personal life, I feel like a lot of time when we see good example, I say, I wish there was more people like him. I wish there was more friendship who were loyal, and I wish I had it. We only talk about our benefit, the good things that I wanted. But why don't we be the example like Jonathan? He loved David as himself, and we need to love our friend and create an environment where we love them as ourselves, and where they feel very comfortable, where they feel safe space to open up, and eventually they will love us like we love them, right? So I hope from this podcast, me and you are very encouraged to have a friendship like David and Jonathan, because I really need to practice to have a friendship like Jonathan and David. They're such an amazing. I love how they have such a close bond, and it's so amazing to hear from on the Bible, and I hope you are encouraged to have friendship like them. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to have more insight on God and how to stay strong in our faith. Goodbye.